Hello, I'm Gina, and I'm one of the special education teachers at UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital. And Erin and I are here today to present to you about our virtual programming at our hospital. But before we get into that, we'd like to just give you all a little bit of background about ourselves. I am a special education teacher, and I've been working at UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital for about 14 years now. And I am dually trained as a child life specialist, but I also have my special education credential. Currently, I am working solely remotely, and like all of you, have had to change my teaching practice and figure out how to do things differently since COVID-19 has impacted our school program.
I'm Erin. I'm also one of the special education teachers at UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital. This is my 6th year in the hospital school setting. I worked in special education and traditional school settings for about 15 years before I came here. I'm duly credentialed. I have a general ed and a special education credential, and I'm working almost entirely on site. COVID still had a really profound impact on our workflow and how things looked, and we all had to figure out how to continue to do our jobs. I had to be remote 1 day a week for a little while because of childcare, and so figuring out how to do both was also a challenge. And so I'm just really excited to share, what our program came up with.
But first, before we start telling you about all of the virtual programming, I think it's really important to sort of just review the changes that we have had in our school program. And then we'll take a deep dive into our virtual programming opportunities that we've been able to create with our amazing child life team. Specifically, we're going to highlight the creation of our parent roundtable school specific group, as well as our music and story time groups. And then in closing, we hope to guide you through a reflection of our creation of our groups in hopes that you can create groups of your own. So the first thing I'd like to talk to you about is a little bit about the makeup of our school program. We have 9 staff members total. We have 1 supervising teacher, 4 special education teachers, 4 general education teachers, and 2 of our teachers work specifically in our outpatient clinics, while the rest of us serve our inpatient units. 3 of the teachers are employed by San Francisco Unified and have been working solely remotely since the onset of the pandemic in March. And SFUSD, San Francisco Unified Schools, still remain closed and haven't opened during the pandemic. Our outpatient teachers are also continuing to work, are also working remotely, and our inpatient teachers are working on site in the hospital. The mix of on and off-site teachers is something to really think about when you're thinking about virtual programming and its logistics. I think it has a lot of benefits that we have a mix of on-site and off-site staff. The other piece that is a huge advantage to our school program is that we kind of live under the Child Life Services umbrella. So that means that our department is made up of our program, child life specialists, and their programming spaces like the playroom and the teen lounge. We have the Center for Families, which is staffed by our parent liaisons, and our creative arts team, which is composed of some music therapists, art therapists, and technology specialists. And with the help and collaboration of our child life team, we've been able to create a lot of really great virtual opportunities for families during this time of the pandemic. We'll get more into the specifics of and descriptions of the actual programming. But first, we want to go over how our school program has changed because of COVID. So as you can see from these awesome pictures, these are a couple of pictures of our classroom, one pre-COVID, one post-COVID. So our classroom prior to the pandemic was open 2 times daily for both patients and their siblings. And as you can see, I think our attendance varied, but generally we could have between 1 and 10 students in our classroom at a time. And now we are only able to have 1 student for one-on-one sessions, and siblings are no longer to even visit the hospital, no longer allowed to even visit the hospital. So we have our teachers have been really creative about zooming them in to work with their siblings. And we even had one teacher who got special permission to work with a couple of siblings down on the first floor, um, and and was able to provide for a family some school time for siblings that were staying close by. But as you all know, we all miss our busy classroom. But the really amazing thing is that our classroom is actually the only child life space that's been open for patients during the pandemic, even though it is one-on-one sessions. So for bedside, as you can see, that has changed too. um, Teachers working remotely, we call into rooms and introduce school services to families and check in on them to see what they need. A lot of times families will ask for an absence note, but then are pretty taken care of because their kids are doing remote learning through their own school. But sometimes students still need us to do bedside school. And so we'll set up a Zoom with them and create curriculum based on what they need. And as far as inpatient teachers, when they're working with students now, they are in their rooms donning all appropriate PPE and maintaining a 6-foot distance. And one thing actually that has even changed since this picture is that this was in the spring, but now patients are and families are required to wear masks as well when they're in the room. Whereas prior to COVID, we sat next to our students, sometimes even rubbed shoulders with them. So, it's just very different than what it was before. The other piece that we are really missing is that we used to have some really lovely volunteers that would come and assist in our classroom, either at bedside or in the classroom, and we miss them so much. And the other thing we would do is also we had special visitors who would come monthly. So some of the special visitors that we had were from our local science museum. We had scientists from the Exploratorium that would come once a month. We had dogs that would come visit from the SPCA. We had poets that would actually come weekly and would provide poetry lessons for students. And then also we had a person that would teach Lego engineering as well. One thing that we have been able to do a couple of times is have some virtual field trips for students. So this other photo is from the Slide Ranch, which is a local ranch to the Bay Area. And we luckily have always had a really great relationship with our technology specialists who run Kaleidoscope Studio. And we, even prior to COVID, we would do a monthly game show called Quiz Show. And what would happen is that we would have students, you can see from the picture, that would come into the studio and play the game show. And then would have students playing at bedside. And we would also luckily have special visitors from our San Francisco Police Department, and they would play both in the studio and at bedside with students. Now, we have transitioned to using Kaleidoscope Studio to put out a lot of virtual content, and then some of the smaller groups are via Zoom. But we've always collaborated with the technology specialists as well as our creative arts team. They all used to do art and music groups, and we would often allow students to go to our music group in lieu of coming to school. So I think that we already had some alternatives for students, but we are so happy to be able to have created some other pieces as well.
So since March, we've developed a lot of really fun and exciting virtual content. There For a while, we were doing 2 shows a day through K Studios, hosted by child life specialists and teachers and members of and music therapists and art therapists. In the morning would be Variety Show Junior. That was geared toward the sort of birth to 4 set. Stories, Play-Doh time. Always kids are encouraged to call in and answer questions or share what they're doing in their rooms. Frequently, we get some really, really sweet callers with Variety Show Junior. Music Jeopardy is still a huge hit. One of our music therapists and one of the child life specialists do it. It's a real, truly live, original content Music Jeopardy style game every week. It's Everybody is invited to watch Music Jeopardy. A lot of parents will tune in and play Music Jeopardy, even if they have much younger kids and call in. But the teens that we have here have really, really enjoyed Music Jeopardy. That's been a really exciting, very, very popular show, and that has continued to happen every Tuesday. Variety Show Junior was happening 5 mornings a week, and now we're down to 2. It's still a good time. Virtual Teen Hour is a Zoom group that the two child life specialists put together for teens. It happened 2 afternoons a week for an hour, and they have had fantastic viewership. The teens have really, really enjoyed it. We have a teen lounge here at our facility that used to be a great space for patients who are able to leave their rooms together and just be teenagers together. And so since that programming space is closed, Virtual Teen Hour is the new alternative to that. And they frequently get between 6 and 15 teens that tune in. The child life specialists turn their cameras off, but the teens know that they're there supervising. They play games. They talk about what it's like to be in the hospital. They discuss the pandemic. There have been just a lot of really, really great connections made with the patients. And one of the really great benefits to that time has been that not only patients who never would have been able to go to the teen lounge because they're on isolation precautions or things like that, are now able to participate and see other hospitalized teens at the same time. And then art group has been we have one art therapist on staff. She comes up with an exciting and different art project to do once a week. She usually hosts that with another child life specialist. And so she'll perform the art activity live on TV. She'll ask patients to call in and talk about the art projects they're doing. She will get a little into logistics later, but she puts together the supplies to complete that art project on the morning of, and all of those are delivered to potentially interested patients' rooms. It's been a lot of fun. Then we also have Yucca Mommies and Daddies, one of our music therapists who primarily works in the ICN and in the cardiac units, has taken groups of moms and dads and taught virtual ukulele via Zoom, and they have virtual concerts even occasionally for the babies. So that's been a really neat way for parents to connect, because even though parents are here, we're only allowed to have one parent at a time at bedside at the moment. And there are sometimes when moms and dads of the same patient can see each other on Zoom and play ukulele together at the same time. So that's been a very, very sweet group that Brianna came up with. Virtual slime time has been amazing. One of the bone marrow transplant child life specialists started doing a slime hour where a bunch of her patients would just make slime together and talk about the slime. And it's a great time, because who doesn't love slime, really? That's been really special too. She has remarked on a number of occasions that without this happening, she never would have come up with the opportunity for all of these BMT patients who would never get to see each other while they're inpatient to talk about being there and what that's like, and to feel a lot less isolated. And kids notice that they both have NG tubes and things like that. So not only are they having a really good time playing together, even virtually, but they sort of also get an opportunity to relate and process being in the hospital together in a much more fun way. Bingo is a huge hit here. Bingo absolutely happened before COVID too. Salesforce is one of our partners, and Bingo every Thursday is a big event in the hospital. We've had to figure out how to do that virtually, because it used to be that people would gather in the hallways and go look at prizes. And one of our technology specialists has started photographing all of the potential prizes, playing it on a loop for 2.5 hours so that kids can look and make their top 5 selections, and they call in. So bingo's been a big deal. Bingo has a ton of colors too, which is really fun. Our technology specialist gives kids the opportunity to pick what cards get turned over next. So they really feel like they're involved. And that's been a really good time too. We've had a partnership with the San Francisco Symphony in the past where they would send musicians to play in the halls or play individually for patients, which is always a big hit. And they continue to come and do live concerts on Zoom, usually on Friday afternoons. And sometimes it's an individual musician from the symphony who will talk about their instrument, who will play, and then other times you'll get duets or trios that come and just give like hour-long concerts. That's been a really special partnership to have. Quiz show, Gina talked a little about. It's our school game show. It plays a little like tic-tac-toe and trivia. It's designed for all school age patients. So we try and have content for 5-year-olds all the way up to seniors in high school if they feel so inclined. The best part about Quiz Show is that if you play, you win a prize. So we frequently get a lot of buy-in there. And so Quiz Show has not changed enough. We miss our TV studio audience a great deal. But the nice thing about Quiz Show, that's for the smallest adjustment, I think, in terms of how we're running programming, is that Quiz Show just has gone on, which has been really, really great. And then the parent roundtable, and Gina will go into detail about the parent roundtable, and I will go into detail about music and storytime group because that is my virtual group. So that's more to come.
So as Erin said, we have a bunch of virtual offerings, which is awesome. And before I get specifically into the details of the parent roundtable, I think it's really important for me to explain to you my collaboration with the Center for Families and explain to you what that is. So the Center for Families serves as a lounge, resource center, health library, business center, and concierge desk where parents and the other adult family members at the hospital may tend to their various needs while remaining near their children. It is staffed by parent liaisons who are specially trained parents who provide peer-to-peer support and resources to help families navigate the hospital environment. Other family support services for parents that are offered through the Center for Families is knitting, scrapbooking, parent walking groups, and weekly support groups. The Center for Families believes that if a parent and other adult caregivers in the family are able to care for themselves, then they're more equipped to care for their child. And, one of the programs that was started in the Center for Families is the Parent Roundtable Group. And it's facilitated by a parent liaison, and it meets weekly about a specific topic. And once I learned of this new program, I thought to myself, well, I wonder if it seems like parents would be interested in learning more about school resources. And so I reached out to our Center for Family staff to see if it would be possible to collaborate with them by facilitating a parent roundtable specifically about school resources. And since it has become a standing monthly topic with the official title, School Resources Inside and Outside of the Hospital. The other facilitator who joins this group is from a community organization called Support for Families of Children with Disabilities. And this is a nonprofit that was established in 1982 and has offered information, education, and parent-to-parent support free of charge to families of children with any disability or special healthcare need, and to the professionals who work with them in San Francisco. And I cannot tell you how valuable it has been to not only have the parents join the group, but to have these facilitators who are also parents of children with special needs themselves. They support each other and they help support our parents, and in a different way that I'm able to do. I'm so struck. I was so struck by this that in doing my research for this, I found I found that the importance of parent to parent support was not only my revelation, but also that of various researchers. And one of the articles I found, M. Law et al., it's a research study about the perceived effects of parent led support groups of parents for children with disabilities, said that through parent groups, parents gained increased skills, an increased sense of power and sense of belonging, and participants are able to connect with each other and provide support and skills to deal with day-to-day issues that arise with their children with special needs. Another article from the American Journal of Community Psychology about the benefits of mutual support groups for parents of children with disabilities said that support was found helpful in three different areas. One, in developing a sense of control and agency in the outside world. Two, which involved a sense of belonging to a community. And three, which involves self-change. And it makes perfect sense that in hearing each other's stories and struggles, that of course, that type of support is so helpful to them. And it's a different type of support that I can provide. You know, what I can provide is insight into the school system and helping their child get the right supports in place, but I can't provide them with the same support that another parent could, or our parent liaisons. And so I'll talk a little bit more about the importance of groups like this after I get into the logistics and the nuts and bolts of our group. So group logistics, pre-group coordination, the facilitators monthly touch base via email to make changes or modifications to the group. For example, we received some feedback that the sign-in process was a little bit cumbersome, so we're looking into tweaking that right now. You know, and I joined the group. I work solely remotely, so I joined the group via Zoom, but there's a parent liaison on site. And so she is able to send out an email to the whole department for recruiting, and that has a flyer and stuff. And she also is able to go door to door and invite families that may be another child life teacher, child life specialist identified that would benefit from this group. And then I can send the flyer virtually to families so that they know that the group is happening and hopefully will join as well. But I think that it's really helpful to have on-site and off-site staff being able to recruit families for this. And then we have, there is a standing login for all of the parent roundtable groups, not just the school specific ones. So that's nice because it's consistent if parents want to join a group that's, you know, talking about stress management or a group that's talking about school, it's all the same login. And so that's really nice. And one cool thing about the login is that parents do have to register. And so we get their email, and that way we can follow up with them with any, like, you know, I have handouts that I can email to families, or if we didn't get to a question or whatever, we can follow up via email. So in terms of the group structure, the first thing that happens is that the facilitators introduce themselves to the group, and we talk about confidentiality and just making sure parents share only what they feel comfortable with sharing to other parents in the group. And then after we introduce ourselves and do that little talk, we ask parents to introduce themselves and say who is in the hospital and their diagnosis, if they feel comfortable sharing that, and then specifically what they're hoping to get from this group, or what supports they might want for their child at school. Our participants range from parents who have a child with a new diagnosis or a child that already has some support services in school, but they're not, like, because of this hospitalization, or they're not quite sure if it's the right fit for them. And they'll kind of talk to us about, like, how we, you know, what if we have any recommendations or things like that. After all the parents have shared, we move more into like a topic discussion. And so I will talk about, I have a handout which parents have, and so I can talk about just kind of overview of school services, and then discuss any individual, and then we have parents, we have time for parents to discuss any individual needs. And and that's the piece where parents are really so supportive of each other, and they're able to say, oh yeah, my kid has this support in school, and that kind of thing. And it's just so nice to see. And then finally, we end the group by thanking the parents for participating and sharing their story with each other. And then we end with a little stretch and a little breathing exercise as well. So I wanted to talk a little bit more in depth about the school topics. Originally, when the group started, we had this idea that we would do a different school topic every month. So we would have like a distance learning specific group, or like a group that was specifically about 504 plans or individualized education plans. But it sort of evolved in that, like, we just sort of ended up generally talking about all of these things within the group. So that's when we kind of moved it back, like, okay, we're just going to keep it more a general school resources. And and the piece about inside and outside of the hospital, I do talk about our hospital school program, because all of our students, generally ages 4 to 18, are automatically assigned a school teacher. And so the school teacher will go, either call or go to their room and introduce themselves. But I think it's just different. It's like the parent might not be ready to hear all of that information. And so I think it's important for me to just retell them what our school services are, just so that they know what they can get at the hospital. But a big section of what we often talk about are individualized education plans, 504 plans, and then home hospital instruction. And I think that, we had one mom who came to the group with a daughter that was a new chronic diagnosis and had kind of been in the hospital a few times before. And she was falling behind a little bit in school, but was a really good student prior to her illness. And so we were able to really dive down and help that mom and walk her through the whole 504 process to get the support that her daughter needed at school. And even though she was doing distance learning, there's still so many accommodations that can be made even when kids are not physically at school. Another parent that we most recently worked with, she has a child who has an IEP already, but just wasn't sure about the services that they were getting. And her daughter had been spending a lot more time at the hospital. And, we were able to answer some of her questions during the group, but she was also able to send her IEP afterwards so that I could take a look at it, and we could just kind of touch base to see if there was any gaps or anything in her services that we saw. And again, I just reflect on the support that the parents provide to each other. And it's just so nice to see them say, oh yeah, my kid has this and my kid has that. So a couple of other topics that come up are distance learning right now, as well as transitioning back to school. And so the advice that we give to families when their child is participating in distance learning at the hospital is to really talk to their child and let them decide and communicate with the school if they want to have their camera on or off, or have a virtual background, because I think not all kids feel comfortable being in front of a camera while they're in the hospital, especially if they have anything medical that's visible to their classmates and things like that. Empowering families to put a school time sign out on the door is so huge, because it's pretty amazing, but our medical staff will really respect that. And then just reminding them to mute when medical staff come in, ask the medical staff to come back after school is done, and then asking the medical staff to delay their medical conversations until they're muted. And then just moving on to the considerations for going back to school. We're lucky we have a school reentry program, a committee that I am the chair of. And so we have this great flyer, and we do a lot of conversations with families, both in this group and individually, about just transitioning back to school. So the benefits of our roundtable, there are so many benefits that I see, although each, like I said this a little bit before, but even though each family is assigned a hospital school teacher, when we walk into that room, we don't know who was there right before us. We don't know if that family is ready to receive that information, even if they tell us they are. So I think the fact that like families choose that they're going to come to this group, they're in the mind frame to talk about school services, they've probably thought about it ahead of time before they get there. I think sometimes this type of group can be much more helpful than people just randomly coming into the room to see if they need anything. Once I started this group and started thinking about that and the support that the parents give to each other and the support that I could give to parents, I just thought to myself, why haven't we been doing this all along? I think that it's just, I see this as one of the blessings of COVID. I really hope and am hopeful and that this group will continue for a long time, even once precautions are stepped back a little bit. I am so passionate about the fact that there's this space that people can get together and talk about their school needs. And again, like the parent to parent support is so huge. And finally, I think one of the things that has come out of this for me as being a solely remotely working teacher, it's a hard transition going from every day seeing, kids' faces, parent faces. And I think that for me, this has really been a blessing to be able to interact, still over a computer, but face to face with parents who are seeking out help and not just being able to give them hopefully the answers or help that they need, but also providing them a space to speak and learn about other people who are going through similar situations at the hospital. I just, like I said, I feel really fortunate to be a part of this parent roundtable. And that's my deep dive into the parent roundtable, but I'm going to pass it back to Erin, and she's going to get to tell you about her music and story time group and all her cute children she gets to hang with.
They're really cute. It's been you'll see, we have pictures. It's been really cute. So music group there was an all ages music group pre-COVID in the hospital in our playroom music studio area that one of the music therapists, Jenny, ran every week. And right after everything happened and COVID happened to the hospital and everything closed, and for a week or two we weren't even allowed to go into patient rooms, so trying to find ways to connect, to do our jobs in any sort of meaningful way, we all struggled a great deal with that. And then when I was remote for a day a week, I commiserated with my music therapist colleague that I was really struggling to feel useful. It was really hard for me to not get to see kids, and I am very spoiled to get to work on site. And I never lose sight of how spoiled I am that I get to see kiddo faces on a really regular basis in person, and parent faces too. So I had a really hard time with my remote days, and Jenny, who is remarkable and kind, invited me to participate, and we would call it music and storytime group. And so the first few weeks we invited kids who were between 3 and 6 really specifically, because we weren't sure what things were going to look like. And as word got out and as it got more popular, we just sort of expanded it and told the child life specialists and parents that we thought might be appropriate and nurses we thought might be appropriate to any patient who might be interested in a group geared toward that sort of pre-K to first grade age group that they could invite all eligible patients who they thought might be fun. So there was a lot of pre-group coordination also that took place, only in the sense that we wanted to make sure we were identifying as many kiddos as possible. About a month and a half into doing group, we realized, hey, this is Zoom. Siblings could come. And so starting to let parents know that the flyer is, that Zoom information is good on any device, throughout the country. We also learned that nurses really, really like giving their kids something to do for about an hour at a time, especially since there's no longer programming opportunities, or even their patients who are never allowed to leave their rooms. That it's really neat. Nurses love logging their patients into Zoom music groups. So really getting increased coordination with nursing, and then with the unit specific child life specialists, who are also hugely helpful in making sure kiddos are identified and get logged on. Wednesday morning is always sort of a flurry of volts about who might we invite today, and who needs to go where to make sure that the kid has a device, that a nurse might be able to do it, things like that. So that happens very busily, and that's sort of what we do pre. We also, I think about 2 months in to music group, Jenny works a lot with the adolescent medicine population here, and she identified a couple of one patient in particular. When we play the video, you'll see her, who had expressed an interest in becoming a kindergarten or early childhood teacher in college and going to school. So she invited her to be a special guest helper and read a book. And eventually, that particular patient, she was also teaching that patient ukulele. The patient started picking a song to do, and she would sing a song for ukulele. And on her last group with us, she made up her own song about music and storytime group for the kids, which was just so very sweet and special. It's been really, really neat to be able to do that. We've had a couple other adolescent med patients, and then even a few just older kids who are feeling kind of isolated be special helpers and come read a story with us. So we've had some older siblings who have Zoomed in with their much younger siblings who are hospitalized. Sometimes they'll read them a story, or they'll make song requests on their behalf. It's been really, really very sweet. So the recruiting process has also been expanded out to siblings and potential special helpers. Child life has been really, really integral to the recruiting process. I know my patient list. I don't know anyone else's. So every Wednesday early in the morning, we will send out an email reminding the child life staff, teachers, music therapists, art therapists, and child life specialists that we're having group today. And please remember to help identify and recruit their appropriate patients. They've been really amazing partners in that endeavor, and that's been really, really helpful. So we have it. It really has taken a village to recruit. We're honing it down. We're getting a little better. I can now sort of run around with flyers. Jenny continues to be remote on Wednesdays, so I'm sort of the person on site. That's our recruiting. And then the other consideration is Zoom setup and access. There are plenty of patients, surprisingly, who come in without tablets and devices still. We are astonished, but they exist. And so we have in each patient room, we have a computer on wheels that nursing frequently, if it's available, is able to just sort of push over so that the patient's in frame and log the patient on from there. But that requires that nursing is willing to do that. We had a very generous donation of iPads this year. So we have iPads to lend to patients and their families while they're here. So we can get you an iPad if you don't have one. Then there are also, I have one particular patient. She's a long-term BMT patient. She comes to music group every week. She has older caregivers at bedside. Zoom is very intimidating for them. So they still require someone to come and help get that patient logged in. So sometimes there's hand-holding involved, and sometimes you can drop a flyer at a patient door, and parents are very familiar with Zoom, especially after all of this has happened. So we just do always want to make sure that everybody that we invite has Zoom setup and access before we walk away. And so we can talk a little bit about what the group looks like. I'm incredibly fortunate. Jenny is a really phenomenal music therapist and really does run the show. She knows what she's doing. I sort of get to show up and sign and hit the mute button every once in a while for kids who unmute themselves at an inopportune time. But we always sing a welcome song. We take a lot of requests. That we have plenty of nonverbal or pre-verbal patients that participate. Sometimes parents and nurses will throw in a request, and we have plenty of songs that are favorites that we'll just sort of play. If there are requests, we play a few songs. We ask the patients if they have anything that they want to share with the group. Sharing time came in a little bit later, maybe midsummer. There was actually an impetus to sharing time in a video that I will show you soon. But just asking if they have a favorite stuffed animal, if they have a favorite blanket, if they like to eat spaghetti, but sort of just a free share. And then I'll read a book. We always have time for last minute requests because we in no way require people to log on at precisely 1 o'clock and stay for the whole time, which we will always make sure to address when we're recruiting. And then throughout the group, kids sort of come in and go. So if you came in late, you have a last chance to make requests, and then we sing a goodbye song. So that is basic group structure. I have a video. I got to do some Zoom recording of a group. I think it happened around September. So we sort of had our act together by then for the most part. So in the first part of the video, you'll see one of our adolescent med patients reading a story to the kids. One of my favorite parts about what happened in this particular week was one of the younger patients who was videoed had an NG tube and noticed that the adolescent med patient had an NG tube too, and she was really excited to see somebody else who looked like her. She pointed, she has a nose tube too, and it was just, and the adolescent med patient was really appreciative. Yeah, does it ever hurt when you swallow? And doesn't it tickle? And it was a really, really just sweet interaction, unforeseen consequences of things like that happening. So that's the first part of the video, and then we'll just play that.
Because no matter what happens, it's raining and they're still having fun. That's our song?
Zebra.
Okay.
Zebra, good call. Good idea. And how about Rachel? Do you want to pick an animal to put in our song?
How about a cow?
Cow.
It's always my favorite too, Rachel. Good call. Good call.
All right, we got some good ones. We'll pick a couple more, and then we'll do some other songs. All right, I'm going to mute everybody so you can make your animal sounds super loud. Oh, Joy, you have glasses too, just like me. So cool. All right, here's how it goes. One little owl said, hoo, hoo. Two little owls said, hoo, hoo. Three little owls said, hoo, hoo, as they sat on the old oak tree. And one little mouse said, squeak, squeak, squeak. Two little mice said, squeak, squeak, squeak. Three little mice said, squeak, 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 as they sat on the old oak tree. And one big elephant said, "Arr!" Two big elephants said, "Arr!" Three big elephants said, "Arr!" as they sat on the old oak tree. And one little zebra said, what does a zebra say? Could be like a horse. Neigh. Two little zebras said, neigh. Three little zebras said, neigh, as they sat on the old oak tree. And one little cow said, moo. Two little cows said, moo. Three little cows said, moo, as they sat on the old oak tree. And how about we'll put one more animal, maybe a snake. One little snake said, "Sss." Good job, Joy. Two little snakes said, "Sss." Three little snakes said, "Sss," as they sat on the old oak tree. Okay, are you ready? We need a little bit of drama. The old oak tree said, "Oh no." The old oak tree said, "Oh no." The old oak tree said, "Oh no. All these animals are sitting on me. Too many animals." Nice job. Okay, Rocky, I see you raising your hand. What would you like to tell us?
Yes, Rocky.
All right, Rocky, we can hear you. What would you like to tell us?
1. Elephants can't fit in a tree. 2. Cow can't fit in a tree.
No.
You've got a friend in me.
Oh yeah, so we could pause just really quick. So that was freezing. So kids get the opportunity to request whole songs. They get the opportunity to request special animals or foods or things like that to put into songs. As you saw, so that sweet adolescent med girl participated as long as she could, and then she had a doctor pop in the room, so she headed out. She didn't even get to hear her cow in the song. That was okay. But it's a decent example of people sort of coming and going in the group as they please. It's never at all a big deal. And lots of kids feel empowered to share their thoughts about the songs, which is really, really great. So this next section was just one of those things that you couldn't ever plan for if you even tried hard. Little Joy in the middle had asked for the Toy Story song, and so Jenny started to sing it, and then a magical sharing time happened, and we'll just let it play.
You've got a friend in me. When the road looks rough ahead and you're miles and miles from your nice warm bed, you just remember what your old pal said. Yeah, you've got a friend in me. Oh my gosh. Can you guys all see? So not only does Augie have a Woody and a Buzz Lightyear, Joy has Woody and Bo Peep.
That's amazing.
That is so cool. You've got a friend in me. You've got a friend in me. You got troubles, I got them too. There isn't anything I wouldn't do for you. We'll stick together and we'll see it through. Yeah, you've got a friend in me. Oh, and Rocky's showing us her elephant. Some other folks.
And that's how sharing time was born in music group. It was just so special to be able to see the kids come in. Augie was zooming in from his house. Joy was in the hospital. Rocky was on another floor in the hospital. And so it was really just, it was really, really neat that the kids just really, parents too, participated in that endeavor, but that they sort of spontaneously decided to do that. And then to close with the video cuteness is our goodbye song.
Wave and we'll say goodbye to all of our friends. Goodbye. Farewell. Goodbye to you, my friend.
So that is the basic structure of Music and Storytime Group. It looks very, very different every week. I usually try and pick at least 4 books beforehand. And it's a game time decision based on the ages of most of the kiddos that come or the general makeup of the group, what I end up reading. So we always do end up adjusting, sometimes right in the middle of the group in the video. All of those kids are school age, but we will frequently have toddlers tune in, as young as the youngest we had was about 18 months. We'll have really little tinies tune in, and then much older kids who have special needs who would still really enjoy just singing along and listening to a story and participating. So we get a really, really delightful wide range of kiddos show up to the group, and it's different every week and always a really, really good time. It's been really, really special. So on this slide, there are so many benefits of the group aside from the obvious adorable factor. it has been just a really, really great opportunity to connect kids to their families at home. We have a lot of sibling participation from home recently, which has been really special to connect hospitalized patients who would, even if programming spaces were open, who would not be able to meet and see each other. So the goal is absolutely to continue the group even after we're able to reopen our programming spaces and have in-person group programming. Jenny and I have had preliminary discussions about maybe just having a Zoom camera with that on and having group in the playroom again as it used to be, but with a couple of small adjustments so that we can still include so many more kids. We may just keep that one group virtual even when programming opens up again, but continuing the group is definitely something that we are motivated to do. It's been a really great experience. Incorporating siblings has been just a really big deal. The watching little kids' faces light up when they see their siblings show up in a Zoom group has been nothing short of magical. A lot of our patients right now are here for a month and 2 and 3 at a time. Some of them aren't seeing their other parent if they're having to travel from too far away. So that's been just really neat that everybody gets to sit and sing songs together and just sort of be in a space at the same time. And then the unforeseen, again, the weird gift of COVID, the unforeseen involvement that you can get from the BMT population is a huge one, that is always an isolated population. And now we have avenues to have some social opportunity, even with new kids that they haven't met before that they can relate to in a very different way from their peers or their siblings or their friends. It's been really, really special to get to watch. And then, so I worked in early intervention for a little while. So very selfishly, it's been very fun for me to get to hang out with the preschool age population again. It's nice to be able to stretch that muscle a little. And then to really meaningfully collaborate with a colleague like a music therapist, to get insight into what her job looks like, for us to get to share those opportunities together has just really been very special. And also the increased visibility of all of our services and how they can work together for nursing has been a really big deal. We have nurses who volt and say, "Is today music group day?" That there's that's been really neat too. That we sort of have a different type of visibility because we have to rely on nursing for help in that way too, for recruiting purposes and things like that. So there are 1 billion benefits to Music and Storytime Group, and those are a few.
So now, considerations for creating your own group. Here's where we do a little bit of our recap of kind of just things that we thought about when creating our group. I think it's important for you to take time to think about each of those pieces, and we're going to kind of go back through them, but maybe in a little bit more general way so that you can see if this would be possible at your hospital and with your patients. And I just think that there's so many benefits, and kind of like what Erin was saying, like our groups vary. So it's like, it doesn't have to be a huge group of patients. It could be a little bit smaller. So the first consideration that we thought of when we were thinking about our steps for creating groups was whether you're working remotely or in person. So I think this is a really important factor and is mostly going to impact your group in terms of like logistics, because luckily for us, we either are the on-site person or we have an on-site person who's able to do some kind of like on the ground recruiting of people to come to the group. The other thing to think about and delivering of supplies. And then the other piece about working remotely or not remotely is like, when the staff that's on site, like, do they have a space to join in the video call, or will they join from a patient room? So I think that there's just lots of benefits to being both on and off site. I think as someone who's working off site, you are able to join a group, but you can still recruit via email or reaching out to your patients' nurses. Like Erin said, we have a internal communication system where we can reach out to nurses. So that's really good. And then secondly, like, is there an identified need? And what we really mean by this is, what type of group are you going to create? Are you going to make a virtual story time? Are you going to do a science project, art project, circle time, parent group? There's so many things that you can do. And I think, I often think of one of our remotely working teachers. She has a really adorable, cute pug dog named Summer, and she works with a student every single day. And part of their school day is that this student gets to interact with her dog because she loves her dog, and Summer's adorable. So I like her dog also. But I think that that's just something to think about. Do you have a pet? Do you have a hobby? Do you have a talent that maybe you wouldn't necessarily share in a normal time, but maybe you play the piano or sing or whatever, and I think that all of those are opportunities to create a meaningful and an engaging virtual interaction. It's all about like what's going to keep the kids engaged and what's going to be meaningful for them. And like Erin said before, probably the most meaningful part is going to be seeing other kids. But as I said, it could be just you and the patient you're working with, or it could be a larger group.
Who will you collaborate with? So also just a couple other, we've had patients teach each other how to knit in virtual groups. We've had teachers teach a bunch of patients at once how to do basic origami shapes in groups and read a story. There are 10 trillion possibilities. And then who will you collaborate with? So we are incredibly lucky in our department. We work really closely with child life specialists and the creative arts team on a fairly regular basis. Child life specialists are our most valuable coworkers for collaboration, in the sense that they are unit specific. They have a lot of really in-depth ideas about which patients need what and on what day. So they're always excellent collaborators. Our music therapists are the same. My favorite collaboration with Jenny has been really, really special. But even collaborating with nursing, collaborating with parent liaisons, collaborating just with a couple of different parents. There are just sort of infinite possibilities in terms of collaboration. If you sort of get in the framework of, I figured out I want to do this. Now, how do I make it happen? Which person do I need? Who do I need to get into a room? How do I get into a room? Things like that, just to get all of the kids together. And then how will you spread the word? So if you're entirely remote, recruiting becomes a little more challenging and you have to rely on some member of the on-site staff or on your excellent phone skills. Can you call into patient rooms and just provide that information? It is in fact very possible to recruit remotely. Jenny and I did it early on. It's much more clunky, but it can absolutely happen. We have flyers for every one of our types of virtual programming. We'll get a list, we'll run those flyers into individual rooms and follow up with nursing or child life specialists closer to the time. Group Volts, the internal communication system, will be sent out to nurses as a friendly reminder. This is happening in 5 minutes. Make sure you help tune in your patients. Social work can even be helpful if your social work is on site. Sometimes they really love the opportunity to give parents a break, so it can be very motivating for them to say, hey, let's turn this on for your child and you and I can step out into the hall while they're engaged and do it that way. So there are lots and lots of different ways to spread the word, but we primarily use flyers and texts as our primary means.
Agreed. And one thing that I wanted to point out just on this slide, one of our lovely teachers made this, and it actually is able to be sent through a Volt, which is our internal communication with nurses. So they get the little picture and can show the kid and then get the login information too, which is really cool.
And then what do you need? What do you need so that the kids can participate meaningfully? This, what will kids, making slime is always, as we all know, a very popular event with children right now. It's all about the slime. So are your patients immune compromised? Do things need to be brand new? All sorts of, we've learned that you need to think all of that through before you plan your groups. But then you can turn into an assembly line, well-oiled machine of just making sure that it all gets in individual bags, as long as you have someone to take it out to patients. And sometimes we use a lot of medical supplies, even in slime making. Sometimes nursing can be really, really helpful in terms of getting things to kids. The really easy thing for music and storytime group is that the only thing you need is a book and a music therapist. And so that's simple. When we're doing origami groups or origami demos, you don't even have to have origami paper if you can teach a kid how to make a perfect square with a piece of printer paper. So you can use all of your tools available. And so they're, yeah.
So we just want to say thank you for joining our session, even though it is virtual. We would love for you to reach out to us if you have any follow-up questions or anything. And it's just been such a privilege to share with you kind of, what our department and what we've created during this time of kind of uncertainty. We've just been able to still continue to reach out to our patients and families. We're happy to help walk you through starting a group, or think about who, if you're working remotely and you don't have a lot of access to inpatient staff, just think about like different avenues of figuring out how to maybe contact someone that's in the hospital and that could help you.
Thank you so much.
And lastly is our reference page. Again, just thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye.